Hey, welcome to another episode of the Coffee Break Podcast, where our mission is to share business ideas, practices, and strategies while we enjoy our cup of coffee. Today's guest is our very own Sam Gray, our purchasing manager, and we're going to be talking about some insights from a book that he and his coworker recently went through, The 4 Disciplines of Execution, how they took that and applied it on their own, and the results that they're having from that. So that's going to be our topic of conversation. Get ready. It's going to be a fun one with Sam Gray right after this.
We got so much to say. We got a podcast to make. We're sipping on lattes, and it's time for a coffee break. It's time for a coffee break. Oh, yeah.
Well, let's jump into it. Sam, how are you doing today?
I am phenomenal. How are you, Chad?
It's always a pleasure to chat with you just regularly, but today's extra special because it's another podcast episode, and it's been a while since we've had a conversation between the two of us on the podcast.
Yeah, it's been a minute.
I mean, we had our one-on-one this morning,
yes,
but outside of that,
there were no microphones on our face.
Yeah, there were not cameras all around the room and microphones. And I cannot remember the last time that you were a guest on the podcast, but it's been a while. So wanted to jump into kind of the conversation, and we're going to skip rapid fire today, just FYI, because I know you love that type of stuff, but I wanted to skip it today, so you're off the hook. Mm. You cool with that?
I'm incredibly upset.
All right. So Sam is our purchasing manager, has been with the company for quite some time. 7 years?
8 years.
8 years.
8 years.
Really? Okay, awesome. And has seen a lot of changes and transitions in the organization. So one of the things, the reason that we're talking today is recently I had gone through this book, if you can see it here, it's called The 4 Disciplines of Execution. And I want to give kind of the premise around the topic of conversation today is that I read this book, got a lot of great insights from it. Tried to communicate them out to some folks in the team, failed miserably. Mm. And through conversation one day in our one-on-one, I said, Sam, I want to get you a copy of this book, and William a copy of this book who works alongside of you. Yep. And I want you guys to read it and give me your opinion on it. And that is why we're sitting here having this conversation today, because there was a transformational difference between me reading it, trying to communicate that concept, and you guys reading it and implementing the concepts. So that is kind of the phrasing of the conversation today is when somebody on your team grabs a hold of the information and applies it themselves, what is the difference of that? So that's kind of where we're going today. Real quick before we do that, give us a quick little 30,000-foot overview of what the 4 Disciplines of Execution is about.
Basically, the book is it's just a practical application of getting goals done. But basically, he goes through talking about everyone deals with what he calls the whirlwind. It's all the things that happen day to day, big projects, angry customers, fires you have to put out. Mm-hmm. Everyone deals with that, and you have that's essential. It's necessary. That's what pays the bills. That's what makes your customers happy, is taking care of those things. So it's not something you can avoid.
Yep.
And then on top of that, we all have our own goals for improving, for growth in our companies, and we all struggle with balancing those two. Those two things fight each other constantly.
Yeah.
And so he's basically come up with a practical application of accomplishing those goals and still taking care of your whirlwind. And that's really what the 4 Disciplines of Execution are, just practical ways to tackle that goal.
It's funny. So I've got a business group that I'm a part of a couple of times a week called businessmeeting.online, and it's like-minded business owners that are trying to figure out these types of things all the time. And we actually just recently had a conversation about it that you just kind of answered a lot of those questions. Is there's so much going on. There's so many distractions. How do you make time to make improvements? Yep. And I think that's a question that no matter what level of an organization that you're in, if you're at ownership, if you're in management, or if you're an employee just trying to make things happen, how do you understand that there's the whirlwind, there's the things that happen, there's just the daily activities of business.
Yeah.
how do you get, I guess, more on top of that, and then also understand how to make advancements and improvements alongside of it?
Right. Yeah, and the very first discipline is to find a WIG, or a wildly important goal.
Yep.
And he says that, so many people have tons of goals and they work on them all pretty much simultaneously, but they've shown statistically that if you work on more than 2 goals, you cannot actually achieve those goals with excellence. So, if you try to, and some people have 12, 50, whatever goals, the more goals you add, the less you can achieve them with excellence. And even more so, they'll probably get lost in the whirlwind as you're trying to achieve them.
So with that said, there's another book called Free the Idea Monkey, and it comes with mixed feedback. But the point of it is, in organizations, typically you have an idea monkey, somebody that's constantly coming up with new ideas, and then you've got ringleaders, people that try to wrangle the ideas and put them into action.
Yeah.
And what you're talking about is important, because at various stages of business, you're going to have people in the organization that are constantly throwing out new ideas, constantly saying, hey, we need to go tackle this. Hey, this is now the new important thing.
Right.
How now? We got to do this. We got to do this.
Right.
And unless you have the wildly important goal, unless you have some priorities slated out, then you just constantly changing and you're just constantly scattered. And I know we've never been in that situation with our organization.
never.
So that's a great, but I mean, in all honesty, that is a struggle that we have.
Yeah.
It's not abnormal for us to say, hey, this is the next thing we got to work on. And now we have 7 different priorities or 7 different wildly important goals that we're all trying to work on simultaneously. And what's the actual result of that?
You end up either not doing them or doing them poorly.
Yeah.
Is what happens, because you're not providing all of your energy towards 1 or 2 important goals. You're not giving anything important. You're not giving anything the energy that it deserves. So, and that's the thing. The only way we'll never fully tame the whirlwind, because again, that's something that we have to accept and learn as part of our business. But the best way we can make it, serve our purpose is to focus on one thing. Yeah. And the minute the whirlwind is not pulling us in at the time, we start working on that thing, because it's that important to us.
Yeah. I want to give another kind of side practical application from my perspective, and then I want to jump into kind of departmental stuff. With our organization, and kind of what you're watching right now or what you're listening to right now is our podcast. And for a while, we started out and we were trying to record a podcast every week, which we still do that. And there's 100+ episodes out there. But we were focused on doing that. But we were also trying to produce daily videos, and we were also trying to produce an Ask the Doc series, and we're also trying to produce a customer service series and a Unbox the Lock series with Sam Gray. And it was just everything that was happening simultaneously, and because of that, nothing was in balance. And unintentionally, and I'm not going to say that we applied all these methodologies, but if I look back now over the past 18 months, we deemed our podcast as our wildly important goal. And a lot of things started to support that. So the studio started to come together to support that. The equipment and the formatting and all that stuff came together to support that wildly important goal.
Right.
Now that we have worked on trying to accomplish that as its own thing that works well, now we can focus our attention on other things and start to bring those back in. But previously we were spread so thin that we had to almost shelve some ideas because we couldn't implement them all simultaneously. Now, that's this application from a department for managing inventory and purchasing and materials. How is that applicable to you? How have you had those types of situations before?
Yeah, I'll say the whirlwind analogy just hits incredibly home for me when I started reading this book, because as purchasing, one day you could get 50 calls, need pricing on this, availability on this. Do you have this in stock? I need this local right now. I need this brought to me, et cetera. So all of those things are happening all at the same time. And so but yet we still have to we're trying to push to get inventory done. We've got to get that done. And, you know, I've sat down and thought, like, are we ever going to get that done? Like, because I feel like just as soon as we start on it, the next day we've made no progress. And so the biggest thing about this book is, and I think that even the way that you're describing how we kind of came into me reading it and William reading it is really what the book tries to portray, is that it's you'll never are going to take these principles and teach them to someone. That principle has to come from them. Yeah. And so what's interesting is I started reading this book. William, who's working for me, he got the book simultaneously. He read it faster than I did. Yeah. And started implementing it before I was even done reading the book. But that's really what it's about, is it has to matter to them. It has to the very lowest levels of your organization, they have to be engaged in that goal. It's got to be wildly important to everyone, not just the leaders. I think that's a very interesting takeaway. I want to kind of circle back on. 4 disciplines of execution is not something that you could necessarily teach or convey to someone. It's something that they have to, I guess, I don't want to say educate, but they've got to invest in it on their own and own it on their own. Yeah. Yeah. If that actually is applicable. Yeah. They've got to take ownership of it. And that's what a big part, again, this is a lot of these things we're reading in this book, the principles behind it are things we've already talked about. Yeah. But it's a very practical way. It's really kind of a blueprint to fall back on. But ultimately, he just keeps saying, you know, regardless of how long it takes, get this in every employee's hands. Yeah. Make them own what they're doing, because if you're just telling them to do things and telling them how badly they're doing that thing that you told them to do, it's just going to continue in a cycle of, you know, yeah. But if you've given them ownership of it, and then they get to see how well the thing they came up with is doing. You know, if he comes up with his own goal and then he gets to see how good his goal is. One of my favorite quotes in the book is that no one cares if they're winning if there is no scoreboard. And if they make the rules for what the score is, they care even more. Yeah. So if they're the ones who came up with how the score is done, then they care even more so. So it's not only that they're winning now, but they made the rules and they're winning by the rules that they made. Yeah, I think, if I'm not mistaken, in this book, he gives some analogy on, and maybe I've heard it from somewhere else, but on essentially playing a sports event without having a scoreboard. And you basically just have a bunch of people out there playing with no clock, no scoreboard whatsoever. And you just kind of have somebody that sits over in the corner and says, keep playing. We're almost there. We're almost there. Yeah, and they may clap at a good play. You know, that guy did really well, but ultimately there's a difference in a 31-32 game and a 47-6 game. Yeah. But they don't know the difference. We don't know if they got upset if there's no scoreboard. Exactly. So it's a completely different game. So we'll move into the scoreboard. The whirlwind is the thing that you have to understand and contain. You have to understand that this is the biggest deterrent of actually working on your wildly important goal. Yes. Once you can identify that and figure that out, then now you have the leeway to start working on what you deem is the wildly important goal. Now, here's the question. Can your wildly important goal, or your WIG, as you mentioned, as the acronym, because that's what they call it in the book, can your WIG change? Absolutely. And mostly the WIG itself is going to change when you accomplish it, or you find out that it's it's not a good enough goal. Maybe it's not specific enough. Yep. There's, plenty of examples where you come up with a wildly important goal and then you realize I'm asking something that can't be done, or this is not really what defines success for us. Like, we've been chasing after more revenue and our customers still aren't happy. So, there are all kinds of different things, but it's a very flexible system, and you have to be willing to see, and that's what's so important about the scoreboard, is you can see how well are you winning. We won, and what does that look like for us? So with this, all right, so you've got a wildly important goal, and then you now start to craft a scoreboard of specific measurables that will build towards accomplishing that wildly important goal. That's kind of the breakdown of it. Now, with that, how do you determine
and I want to, instead of being theoretical,
Sure.
for your department, purchasing, inventory, how did you and William determine what your wildly important goal was? Because no one came to you and said, this is your wildly important goal. This is what's important. This is what you need to work on. How did you guys come up with what is important?
It's really hard because you have so many things that you want to get done. But we basically just sat down and thought, what means the most to us? What do we feel like will ultimately serve our customers better, serve our team better, support, as the purchasing department, support Loc-Doc better, and as well as making our customers happy. And so we came down to ultimately inventory was the biggest thing, which we did RGAs or returns. Our return process was horrible. And it was kind of a test for us because the return process, it took us after we did a wig, we did it for about 3 weeks and it was done. So it was a,
so you guys have changed that multiple times.
Well, yeah, we did RGAs and we did RGAs so well. And they kind of gave us an idea of how awesome that scoreboard worked. Cause RGAs have been something that have just piled up and then we'll spend 3 days figuring it out and then they'll pile up. Those returns will just continue to pile up. Well, we wanted to make that a constant, consistent process. Yeah. So our goal was, we're going to tackle this pile. We've developed a consistent process now, but we have to tackle this pile. Yep. So our wildly important goal was to clear out all the RGAs and make sure we get to where it's come in and then go out, come in and go out. They're no longer piling up. And so William, he set the goal. He said, this many RGAs per day, we're going to track that. That's our lag measure of what he was calling it. It's how we're tracking our process or our progress. So every day in the morning, we would come together. How many RGAs did you do yesterday? And we had set a goal of 3. So if we knew if we did 3 RGAs, 3 returns processed every day, that in 3 weeks, all of them would be gone, barring new ones coming in, which we were taking care of day by day. And so that was our goal, get 3 of those old returns done. And so we could see that bar slowly getting closer. And, it actually took very little management on my part to try to excite him about getting returns done, which is, kind of frustrating, but also relieving because I've been trying to get him excited about that for, who knows how long. Hey, we really need to get these returns done. But because he came up with the goal, he came up with the score and started scoring himself, the excitement, the engagement, the buy-in, the investment, all of that was owned by him. So it was super important for him to get that done. So
let me play the skeptic for just a second.
Sure.
How did you come up with that number? Or how did William come up with that number? Like, what was the science behind it? How did you know that was the number that we needed to shoot for?
It was completely 100% absolutely random.
Okay. So, but why does it matter?
It doesn't. Well, it does and it doesn't. I mean, and that's one thing he talks about in the book is that the biggest thing with your goal is to get all of them done. So, but how do we take score and see how we're winning at that goal? And just pick something. If you get that done and you're not really getting very close to winning, well, then increase the goal. You need a better benchmark. You need a better measure. So
you pick 3 and, well, one that's easy to knock out. So we can knock those out, but we're not actually chipping away at the bigger bulk. Maybe we need to move that up to 6.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. Or we pick 6 and we can't, like day by day, there's no way we can get to 6. So we move it to 3 because, if you're constantly missing your goals, you're getting discouraged. And so you be flexible at those lead measures. And you may find that having a specific number every day isn't even helping. Like maybe we need to figure out a different process for that.
I think it's important to take a break from that real quick and just kind of step back 12, 24, 36 months ago. And have you ever focused on RGAs before, which RGAs, for those who may not be familiar, is Return Goods Authorization. So it's basically a part that has to be returned back to a manufacturer or supplier.
Right.
Have you ever focused on those before?
I have.
Okay. And who has talked to you about those, or who has given you the strategy to say, this is what you need to do?
Me and you have had quite a few conversations about that.
And they've been ineffective.
up until recently, yes.
And what is the difference of it? Because you now have it and you guys are knocking it out of the park. Previously, there was not the wherewithal to actually get that done.
Yeah. Well, I think that there's two parts to that. One is the engagement and ownership of the person doing it. The person who is completing the measures, who's keeping the score, is owning and is responsible for. He's made a commitment to do this, and so he feels he's connected to that goal in a personal way, not just, hey, I've done my job and I'm getting paid for it and I'm going home. No, he said, yeah, I mean, it feels good to say, I'm going to do this and then actually accomplish it and mark it on a scoreboard saying you've done it. You've and once we knocked those RGAs out, I mean, he was over the moon because he had an important goal and he accomplished it. And so the other part, I think, is that scoreboard, is that you're giving them buy-in and then they're able to see exactly what that buy-in's giving them. They're able to see exactly how they're winning on a day-to-day basis and continue to get momentum.
Okay. So the big takeaway is the fact that you guys developed your own metrics. William helped to develop his own metrics and said, this is what I think I can accomplish. And now I'm set out to do it because I have set my own goal rather than somebody else coming in and saying, William, this is your goal. Sam, this is your goal.
Right.
This is what's important. Let me tell you what's important.
Right.
This is the number that you need to hit. Go after it.
Yeah. And that's the key. Like, and I'm kind of learning that even as, as the manager in that scenario, as the leader in that scenario, that it's less about me saying, get this done. And it's more about, getting engagement from him, and encouraging him to own it. And, my role at that point becomes, I think that maybe we should switch that goal, or I've been where you're at. And in my experience, this works better for me. Yeah. And encouraging him, but ultimately making sure he knows that it's his. Yeah. And giving him ownership there, because there's so much value there that that makes them so much more excited and engaged. And it's it's more a part of who he is than it is just him doing work for you. And that's a huge, that's something you can find yourself even as a leader getting in the cycle of get this done and let me know when it's done, not just pouring into them as a person.
All right. So I want to come back to the word engagement because we were talking about that earlier in our one-on-one. But before we do that, I want to talk about the scoreboard because that's something that's really, really important based off of this book. And he talks about it a lot. And you guys invested in a significantly expensive scoreboard. I mean, you went high-end technology, thousands of dollars invested in this scoreboard, correct?
Yeah. Yes, correct. We have this state-of-the-art old whiteboard that we screwed to a steel rack. So it's pretty high tech. So
you've got the $799 Expo dry erase board.
Yeah.
And markers that you already had. It was actually zero investment because it was repurposed from something else.
Yep. Yeah. So we just drew out a chart. We thought about what are our, he talks about lag measures and lead measures. So lag measures is how have you done? Where are you at? What's your progress? And lead measures these are things I can accomplish every day to make sure that that lag measure is getting done. So if I say, my lag measure is getting, 3 RGAs done every day. Well, practically, really my lag measure would be how many RGAs are currently on the shelf. I'm trying to knock all of them out. Yeah. So my lag measure is there's 50 RGAs on the shelf, and as I see those decrease, that shows me how I have been doing. Yeah. But my lead measure is getting 3 done a day. So I know today that if I knock out these 3, I've done my part towards that lag measure. If I knocked out 2, well, something's wrong there. We're not making the progress we're expecting to do.
So lag versus lead measures, this is something that I've been hyped up on for the last probably 10 months or so, and I have failed to communicate it significantly. Yeah. You don't have to agree that much, Sam. Anyways, I failed to communicate it, but you guys picked up the book and figured it out and implemented it on your own, which was very exciting. And we'll talk about some other avenues that we've been able to figure out based off of that theory as well. But point of it is, business owners and managers, for the most part, focus mostly on lag measures.
Yes.
How much money did we generate today? How much revenue did we make today? How many tickets did we process today? Yeah, that is what the mindset is. And it's hard. And we've gone through these exercises so many times. It's hard to get out of that process and say, absolutely, what leads to that revenue? What leads to that income statement?
Yeah, and so and the thing about a lag measure is it's a great tool for showing your progress, but there's nothing you can do about it at this moment right now. There's nothing I can do. If our revenue is at this mark, there's nothing I can do right now to make more dollars show up on that screen. Yeah. It's a result of behaviors we've been doing. So a lead measure is really just an attempt to bring a score of the behaviors you're doing that ultimately lead to more revenue. And so, it's funny, I laugh because I'm guilty of it, but in the book, he says every time he asks them what their lead measure should be, because their lag measure is, make, this much money in 6 months, $300,000 in 6 months, whatever. And he says, well, let's come up with a lead measure. Yeah. So okay, well, we'll do that divided by 6. Yeah. Every month. And it's like, that's just a smaller version of your lag measure. So we need to, what are the behaviors that end up in revenue? Because ultimately you can't, it's so hard to get engagement for something I have no control over. I have to find out things that I have control. If your goal is safety, I'm trying to decrease accidents on the job site. Well, what are the behaviors that decrease accidents? Wearing PPE, doing training. So let's create lead measures to make sure we're wearing our PPE and doing more training, because those are behaviors I can physically do right now to affect that lag measure.
I think one of the cool examples in there, and I always fall back to it, is shoe sales. He talks about that. And I've tried to use this example before and it failed miserably. But the example in there is there was a shoe store that figured out that their lead measure was the number of times that they did try-ons. So you come in the store, hey Sam, how you doing? Yeah. Can I get you to try these shoes on? What shoes would you like to try on? And the more opportunities or the more times that they had people try on shoes, there was a direct correlation to the number of pairs of shoes that they sold. So their lead measure was try-ons. Their lag measure was shoe sales. And so I remember back, I think it was December of last year, I gave this example in our team meeting, and I was like, this is what we got to figure out. Like, what is our try-on? And everybody, fell back into let's break our goal down into days. Yep. And it was like, I felt like I was beating my head against the wall because I wasn't getting that point across. And that's kind of what I'm saying, going back to how I kind of set up the original part of this conversation, is that's all great and wonderful, but until you guys picked up the book and you started to get into it, now it makes sense. You just described lead and lag measures back to everyone else better than I was trying to communicate it before. And you have ownership around it. You have impact and engagement around it because this is how I can affect the ultimate end goal, which I'm trying to accomplish.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's what's incredibly, and that kind of shifts it into more of a culture thing than just a teaching principles to help your employees make you more money. It shifts it into actually investing in people personally. Like, this is a book that, I'm giving you, and you can not only apply this in work, but you can apply this in your life. I mean, there's aspects of this book that I've even taken home, to help with my kids, helping them to whatever I want to teach, in teaching them and helping them grow and helping guide them. There's aspects of this book that I've used because it means something to me, and I've seen things happen in as far as accomplishing these goals and changing the way we do things, that really has affected me personally. Yeah. So it means something. I'm more engaged in it because it's not just words on a page, and it's not just me becoming more efficient. Yeah. It is actually changing who I am.
I've been trying to diagram lead and lag measures to my 3-year-old, and he just gets very frustrated with me. And I'm trying to look at these Hot Wheels, and it's not working. 2 other things I wanted to talk about real quick before we wrap up. Number 1 is engagement.
Yeah.
Earlier today, we were walking around, and you said something very impactful, and I wanted to kind of highlight it about telling people to be engaged.
Yeah.
Oh, that was your cue.
I forget what I said.
Okay.
I don't know what I said.
I don't know what this impactful thing that I said. You said this. Oftentimes, we tell people to get engaged versus finding ways to engage them.
Yes. And yeah, that was really good, man. Whoever said that.
That was a great quote. Somebody put that on a wall somewhere.
Yeah. And that's, we so often as a leader, and again, I think, in many cases, I think we've succeeded in that at our core values.
Yeah.
Our core values, this is a level of engagement that you're required to be in. Like, if you're not engaged to that level, well, we need to talk about whether you're a part of our team. But many times beyond that, in terms of asking them to grow and asking them to improve, it ends there in asking them to do it. And many times as leaders, we think if we've asked them to do it, well, therefore, why aren't they doing it, or why haven't they done it? But as leaders, again, there's a line of, they've got to follow our core values. If they're going to be a part of our team, there's a level of engagement that's required. But as leaders, we have to dig deeper than that. We have to reach farther than that to say, why, not just ask them to be engaged, but figure out what makes them tick. What are they good at? What are they passionate about? Because those are the things they're going to provide and succeed in our company, but also grow in as a person. And I actually thought about this. This is going to be a weird example, but have you seen the movie Inception?
No.
Well, the movie Inception it's about a company that basically manipulates people by going into their dreams and planting an idea into their dreams. And basically they can guarantee whoever's paying them that they can change that person's mind, because their thing is that
this movie is about Facebook?
Yes, correct. Their spiel is of this company in the movie Inception is that if you can make them have an idea and think that it's their own idea, they'll change their mind. Gotcha. Otherwise, it's impossible to change someone's mind. So, and I think it's the same way. Like, and obviously, I'm not saying we go into their dreams and plant our ideas into their dreams and manipulate them, but it's an interesting concept that people will never change from the outside in. They're only going to change from the inside out. So find out what matters to them. Find out what means something to them. Find out how they tick, how they work, what they enjoy, what they're passionate about, and work on those things and use those things, engage as a leader, engage in them, engage in working on those things. And if you can do that and pour into that, then they'll grow as a person, and secondarily, they'll grow as an employee, and they'll improve with you. They'll come up with their own goals, and they'll be excited. I mean, William's already thinking of our next week, our next wildly important goal, because he's seen so much success and it's personal to him.
It's all part of innovation. It's all part of a continued evolving to be a better organization, is having the ability to, one, create an atmosphere where people can share those ideas. And then the second thing is implement them. And if you can do that, then you got a long way to go.
Absolutely.
All right. Last thing I want to talk about is from our perspective, and there will be a future podcast episode diving deeper into this, I guess I should say, with Levi on our book club. But the reason I wanted to bring that up is because this kind of exercise that happened with you and William solidified an interesting concept that if we can engage folks at their level and where they are with ideas or concepts of ideas, how can we get better as an organization? And so we, based off of seeing the results that you and William had going through a book and implementing these strategies on your own without having anybody coalesce you to do that or enforce you to do that, you just read it, figured it out, implemented it. He said, okay, let's start a book club with our organization, completely voluntary.
Yeah.
If you want to get involved, you're more than welcome to get involved. We're going to supply you with the books. We're going to supply you with all the resources to do it. And then we're going to discuss it and implement it as an organization.
Yep.
But it gives every single person, and right now we've got about 50% of our organization involved in this, the ability to gain insights from a concept and then strategize as to how to implement them on their own.
Right.
And so the theory is, again, like you just said, if each person gets excited on it on their own and they bring these ideas and they implement them on their own, how much more effective is it than if a manager or a leader says, this is the new strategy, this is the new thing that we're going to implement, and everybody's just like, whatever, I don't care about that. But if 50% of the organization says, hey, these are our ideas and we care about them, how much farther are they going to go? Yeah,
absolutely. And I think that's really redefining leadership as what it really is. It's not being the smartest person that tells everyone what to do. It's the person who looks at someone and sees their potential, sees what makes them special, and engaging in that, pouring into that, providing resources to help them do that, and recognizing it in them even when they don't, and seeing them grow. And ultimately, that's just going to end up creating more leaders and bringing more people into that, and just growing as a person.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Sam, thank you very much for your time today. It's been very important to discuss this and continue to find ways to implement this into our organization. Most likely, this is going to be one of the next books that we go through in our book club. But your WIG, your wildly important goal, focusing on not allowing your whirlwind to distract you from working on that, being engaged, finding a way to engage people on their level rather than telling them to be engaged.
Yep.
And then the outcome of that is really just innovation at every level within your organization. And if that's something that you're interested in figuring out, then this is one way to go about it. So very cool. Thank you for your time and input today.
Yep. Thanks for having me.
Hey, Sam, thank you very much for taking the time to have a conversation with us today. It's always a pleasure. We are really excited to share these episodes with you every week. There is a brand new podcast episode every Tuesday at 9 a.m. You can find more information out by going to locdoc.net/podcast. All of the episodes are there. All of the subscription links are there, so you can find it whatever podcast platform you enjoy listening on. And if you prefer to see Sam's amazing beard and his really cool green checked shirt, you can check that out as well by visiting us on Facebook and YouTube. All the videos are there from all of the episodes. All you need to do is search for LOC, DOC, and podcast, and you're going to get a slew of videos to come up and to check those out as well. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you very much for sharing this information. If you think this is impactful to other people inside of your organization or friends of yours, please make sure that you share it and send out those links to your coworkers and friends to get this information out to more folks. And again, find out more at locdoc.net/podcast. We'll see you next time. Have a great day.